What's up, everybody? In this video, I'll go over several suspension and chassis upgrades I've performed on Project BB. I'll most likely split the video into two parts as there is a good amount to cover. I'm going to start with the rear of the car. The rear control arms on Benji need to be replaced very badly. The bushings were worn, the adjustability was limited, and they are rusted to hell. In my opinion, one of the most labor-intensive single bolts in a modern Subaru is the bolt that holds the rear lower control arms on the GC and GD chassis. So first I want to explain why they are such a pain, and then I'll share a method that may help remove them with minimum effort and tools. The tools I used to remove the part were hand tools. Now I'm not sure if it's the same setup on Legacies or other models, but if it is, hopefully this will help. Here's a pic of the rear knuckle assembly removed. This is the bolt that holds the front and rear control arms. The issue is that this section holds water, and with time it creates a pretty bad rust situation. The reason why this bolt is difficult to remove is because there are 4 major points that resist rotation. So if you know you will be removing the part ahead of time, I suggest spraying that area with WD-40 or an equivalent rust breaker when you order the new parts. Either way, you're going to need a fresh can of spray. Once the parts are saturated, remove the nut from the bolt with a breaker bar. My breaker bar is 2 feet long. This can be done while the knuckle is still in the car. Next, remove the bolts that hold the control arms to the subframe. If your arms are stuck in the subframe, just pull them down with your hands until they are clear. Doing this removes 2 main points of resistance of rotation. And spray the parts with more rust breaker. Now if you go to the gym and have a pretty good deadlift technique, this is when it comes in handy. Use the breaker bar to break free and rotate the bolt. For me, the bolt did not break free with a fast jolt. You have to perform a steady controlled lift and getting upright as possible. The bolt should start grunting and grinding, make a bunch of noise, and slowly break loose. It took me a couple of partial rotations before the bolt rotated freely. At this point, spray the part some more. Reconnect the rear control arm to the subframe. Now that's one control arm, not both. This will mean the only point of resistance is the rear control arm. Rotate the bolt until the control arm breaks loose. Now the last part, the front arm. Connect the front arm to the subframe just like you did the rear arm, and do the same thing. Now if you're lucky like me, the front arms on both sides broke free from the bushing, which means the arms broke loose from the bushings that are supposed to be permanently attached to them and are fused to the bolt. To get the last part done, I removed the knuckle, and then I use a tipped punch and a big ass hammer. You don't have to remove the knuckle. If you have an air hammer, you can just use that. For me, I didn't want to hit the bodywork, so I removed the knuckle and went to town. So when you hit the bolt, make sure you don't use anything flat, otherwise you will damage the threads. So that's why I use a tipped punch. Some people, you can actually put it in a vise and heat it up and give it a couple of raps with a hammer and it should break free. Now installing the new arms is pretty straightforward. It's the reverse method, but just make sure you preload the suspension before you torque your bolts. The suspension is supposed to be at right height before torquing your control arms back into the vehicle. And you will definitely need to perform alignment, whether it be a string alignment with a bar or with an alignment rack at a facility. Oh, FYI, the lateral links shouldn't be an issue. Those should bolt right in. So the next part I replaced in the rear, the subframe. I'm pretty excited about this. The OEM subframe was, like many things from the donor car, rusted. I did grind out as much rust as I could when I swapped everything, but it's been 2 years and the rust came back with a vengeance. So after digging around online, I found the Subaru Subframe Fabricator, TSS. I'll put a link in the description below. So I bought front and rear subframes, and after opening the box, I was honestly blown away by the quality of the parts. It's actually more of a kit, as it comes with brand new hardware. See the cone shaped inserts? They match the inside of the tubing, so the subframes are actually locked down, opposed to the OEM subframe, which uses bushings. And all the hardware comes pre-assembled, so you don't have to figure out how everything fits, or which cone goes where and which bolt. All the hardware has everything on it, so all you got to do is take off the nut and put it where it belongs. Now the gold powder coat, that was the color that I chose. There are a bunch of options and a couple of different choices in terms of the framework for your application, but just go to the website and you can check them out. Okay, so replacing the subframe. I did this while replacing the control arms and drive shaft, as they're all connected. The first thing I did was remove the drive shaft. If you want to know how to do that, you had to see my drive shaft video. I took out the control arms from the subframe, and then I disconnected the diff from the subframe. At that point, there should only be 4 bolts holding the subframe to the vehicle. If you're going to replace the subframe only, you can remove the knuckle assembly from one side of the vehicle and slide the subframe out through that side. You do not have to take off both sides. I did because I was replacing all my control arms, the lateral link, and the subframe, and the drive shaft. Now keep in mind, I did all this on floor jacks, so I was able to keep the parking brake and the ABS lines attached to the knuckle assembly because I could just set them on the floor and slide them to the side. And I also used Velcro straps to hold my axles to the sway bar. And now the frame is out, and it's time to do a weight comparison. The OEM frame weighs in at 27.4 pounds, while the new unit is 14.6 pounds. So that's a 12.6 pounds difference, or a 47% reduction from the stock weight. Now, installing the part has several benefits. Clearly, it reduces weight, but it also increases rigidity. Another benefit of the design is that the components in the rear are a lot more serviceable, as the tube design creates a free space to get your hands and tools through. There is one drawback in installing this, and that's that it makes everything that isn't clean or new look like poop. It puts dirty or rusty parts to shame. But no, seriously, the rear kit is one of the better aftermarket pieces I've installed, and I've done a lot of work to this car. I will say that there are a couple of things that you should be aware of when installing the rear. Have a Dremel sanding cylinder ready, because the powder coating makes the holes a hair too small for the control arm bolts to fit through. So before fitting the subframe to the vehicle, make sure you open up those holes. Next, the fitment is very tight if you have the stock gas tank. You may have to deform the tank a little for it to fit the frame in. You can do that as you see fit. Next, I always install my bolts by hand, so I definitely wouldn't suggest using a gun or anything to force the frame into place. Another note is that the new frame does not come with the hanger post for the exhaust or a bracket for the heat shield. If you have a welder, you can put these on. I don't, so I just have to live with them for the time being. But I don't really see this being a functional issue. Installing the frame was not bad at all once I got the 4 main bolts located and torqued properly. Just make sure when you're putting the frame in, you don't pinch anything along the way. And installing all the other components, you just put them on and you should be good to go. Now remember to always use torque specs during assembly, and oh yeah, and the kit even came with brand new polyurethane bushings from the diff. So I'm super happy with it. Like I said, this kit is awesome. And that's all I have for now. I'll cover my front subframe experience in another video. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.